What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Phaithful Phanatics show. As always, I'm your host, Dylan Davis, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Matt McGinty, and a very special guest, ESPN's own producer of ESPN's Get Up, Paul Hembekides, Sneaky Hembo, however you know him. But guys, how is everyone's Labor Day weekend, and how are we doing today?
Dude, we got a football game that matters on Sunday. I'm over the moon. I'm freaking over the moon. And the Phillies have been frustrating me all summer long. So what I need is just more frustration in my life, and I'm sure the Eagles will be able to provide that.
Yeah. So not upset that basically summer's, over? Ready for football season, Hembo?
I'm ready. I've been waking up. I wake up early. I go to work. It's like high 50s, low 60s. The air is like crisp and clean. Like I'm ready to see somebody hit someone.
Gint, how was your Labor Day weekend?
Good, man. Busy, working, coaching,
Yeah, I'm sure. Wasn't down the shore or anything, Gint? All right, but let's get into it. Well, first, before we get into all this football talk, you mentioned the Phillies. One quick question, Hembo. Last time you were on, we talked about the midway point trade deadline. The Phillies were going to make the playoffs in your mind. You still think that? 2 games out right now?
I do still think that, and the reason I think that is twofold. One, I've seen the Phillies play well enough against good teams to make me believe that down the stretch, with this ridiculously easy schedule that they have, they'll beat those guys. I know that has not been the case this season. It's in the Marlins, so ultimately you have to beat the teams on your schedule. But the high end of this team is higher than it's been in years past. The pitching, you're getting some frontline pitching now in a way that you weren't before, while the bullpen is holding the fort at least to some degree. And Bryce Harper's a good enough player right now that he can carry an entire lineup by himself. That guy's the best hitter in baseball since the All-Star break. I don't care what anyone says. He's mushing in all 4 quadrants of the zone. Whatever pitch you throw up there, honestly, he's like pitch around good right now. Teams aren't doing that, but it wouldn't surprise me if over the last 3 weeks or so of the season they did. I'm going to stick my claim here and say the Phillies will make the playoffs. The Mets have no shot. I told you that 2 months ago, and I still believe that. And the Braves, if not for that, I think somewhat fluky win streak, which is sort of how I viewed that stretch where they were just playing out of their minds, they'd be about even with the Phillies right now. So we're chasing a game and a half, but I'll take my chances given the schedule that we have the rest of the way. And given the fact that I think our high-end play is maybe 10 or 15% higher than it's been in years past.
Yeah, I think I saw Bryce Harper earlier over his last 50 or 56 games is batting .341 from the plate. And Hembo just gave Javi Baez and the Mets a thumbs down. They will not be making the playoffs. 2 thumbs down, sorry, not just 1.
2 thumbs down for that scrub.
Yes, sir. Let's get right into the birds, though. Listen, everyone's excited for this new look team, a lot of new faces, new coaching staff, new regime, everything about it, new franchise quarterback, hopefully. But we didn't get to see a lot of it in the preseason. Only 2 drives in week 1 for Jalen Hurts and the first team. Are you worried at all? Does that worry you at all heading into week 1 and the regular season? Or do you have faith in Nick Sirianni's stock in these joint practices?
It's a loaded question. If the Eagles don't succeed early in the season, it's not going to be because they didn't have enough reps in preseason games. Most coaches around the league now don't even believe in the preseason as being the preseason games, I should say, as being a valuable thing at all. You'll see some teams take them more seriously than others, but for the most part, you're just trying to make it through this period of time unscathed, obviously. And so those joint practices, I think, go a long way in helping coaches sort of control the environment, get more reps, and try to keep their guys as healthy as possible because they're not absorbing the same kind of hits. Everything that I read and everything that I heard about Jalen Hurts, I should say most of those things, was pretty positive. I get a lot of my information, as you can imagine, from most national people. And most of the national people that have their ear to the ground in Philadelphia are saying pretty good things about the kid. Obviously, there's a lot more to this team than the new coach and the new quarterback. But ultimately, I think this season is, at least in large part, going to be defined by how well those 2 mesh, how quickly they hit the ground running. Because I think Philly will actually learn to like Jalen Hurts a good bit if he can play, because I think he's the kind of person, the kind of personality that we'll want to follow. But if his ball placement doesn't improve, and if he doesn't improve as just generally as a passer over what he did last year, I'm not sure it's going to much matter. So I can't say I have faith in either he or Sirianni because we've not seen it before. People have never made a lot of money betting on things that have never happened. So I'm going to see it for a month before I want to get sort of too far out ahead of my skis the way that I did last year during sort of the last quarter of the season when Jalen Hurts came in and balled out, at least in spots, in pockets.
Yeah, that's a great segue because, the previous quarterback in Carson Wentz, his play didn't match his personality. And that's why a lot of Philadelphia fans, didn't like him too much towards the end of his tenure in Philadelphia. You mentioned Jalen Hurts already has the personality part, the off the field, the part down, the leadership down. Can it match it? Can he match it on the field? So I guess my next question is to myself and a lot of Eagles fans. This season is really less about win totals and all about finding out if Jalen Hurts is the guy. How are you looking? How are you going to measure success when it comes to Jalen Hurts this year?
Jalen Hurts has a fairly rare opportunity here. So he was drafted to a team that within the previous year made Carson Wentz the highest paid player in the history of the NFL. They drafted him in the second round, sort of inexplicably, at least a lot of people thought so at the time. And a year later, Carson Wentz is gone. They're paying him $30 million to badly quarterback the Colts. At least that's what I think will happen. And Jalen Hurts has this city. Like he has an opportunity to win the city over, to win the locker room over. And that's a pretty extraordinary thing for a second-round pick who came into this league without many expectations, at least locally. And so, to me, the way that I'll define success for him this season is actually not numerically, even though that's the world I live in. If he winds up being a franchise quarterback, and if he winds up proving that, it's like the definition of pornography. We'll just know it when we see it. Like if Jalen Hurts, because if we see it, the numbers will sort of demonstrate that he has it. And the thing about Jalen is he doesn't need to be an elite passer to be an elite quarterback. He needs to be about a league average passer to be an elite quarterback, and that's because your run game, you're going to have a top 5 run game with his skill set. So you immediately raise the floor of your offense because of that, because he's going to gain easy yardage, because he's going to be able to bail out his offensive line and all that stuff. What you hope is that his learning curve sort of steepens a little bit here, right? And he'll be able to avoid those turnover-worthy plays, and he'll be able to avoid those hanging onto the ball 3 or 4 seconds in the pocket and making ridiculous decisions rather than just throw the ball away. Like I think he and Carson Wentz both have that same gene. They're unwilling, or at least often not inclined to throw the football away. And so Jalen Hurts is such a skilled player. Like he has all the traits, he has all the attributes, right? The question is, can this coaching staff boil all this stuff together? And I think do it pretty quickly, because if 2/3 of the way through the season, we've pretty much seen that Jalen Hurts is going to be a high-end backup, the only thing we're going to talk about the whole next offseason is Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Deshaun Watson, right? So I do think that he has a fairly high hurdle to clear, but I do think he does have the skills and attributes to do it. So I think we did see it last year in the Saints game and the Cardinals game to some extent, and to a lesser extent in that Cowboys game. But like we see that he has all the stuff, but putting that stuff together, it's going to be a big challenge for a first-time coach in Nick Sirianni, who's never done anything like this before.
For sure.
So we asked you about Jalen Hurts' success. Now, how would you deem a successful season for the Eagles?
Just the team overall?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting question, because from where I sit, like most of my people that I talk to, again, these are national types, they think the Eagles could be one of the worst teams in football, and that the Eagles are likely the worst team in the NFC East. I don't see that myself. And the reason I don't see that myself, this is sort of a long-winded way of answering your question. The Eagles are going to have are going to rank, I think, inside the top 10 on both lines of scrimmage. That's now obviously you're sort of presupposing health, but you sort of have to do that when you're predicting an NFL season. The Eagles are going to have a top 10 pass rush, and the Eagles are going to be, I think, have a top 10 offensive line, probably pass blocking and run blocking. I mean, their big people are good, and they have some depth there too to control for some of the injuries that they obviously experienced last year. So that raises the floor of your football team. I think the fewest games the Eagles are likely to lose is something like, I think and the worst record they'll have, assuming again health, is something like 5-12. I could see like that's sort of where they were last year. But I think the Eagles, if they hit, like say they're 80th or 90th percentile, or something like a 9-8 team. So I know there are a lot of people, like it was my opinion, like sort of going into the offseason, that 2021 is a crapshoot. Like you'll either suck and get the first pick or a top 5 pick, or Jalen Hurts will outperform expectations and you'll be in great shape. That may well be the case. But the more I read up on this team and the more I sort of dive into the depth chart here, I actually think this is a team that could win 8 or 9 games. And in this division, who knows what that might be. But if you're going to rank along the top 10 on both lines of scrimmage, you have a shot to be a much better team than the public at large believes. And that's you guys. We've talked about this before, but you sort of know my theory on projecting things out in this regard. The public is very aware of fantasy football players because that's the world they live in. But you and I both know that big people beat up little people, and the Eagles have good big people. Excuse me. So given that's sort of my frame of reference, I think I view a successful season for the Eagles as one in which they have a chance to eke into the playoffs. To me, if they wind up at 7 or 8 wins and Jalen Hurts balls out, that would be something of a success too. But like to me, like anything anything between like 3 and 7 wins then becomes a problem because like as a fan, you'd almost rather than be required to hit the reset button and not live in this purgatory the way that the Sixers and Phillies did for a lot of years.
I'm going to jump to a different guy. That's Zach Ertz. I think a lot of us thought Zach Ertz wouldn't be an Eagle heading into this season. So kind of where do you think the tight end room kind of stands? Because he's only said how he's invested, how this is the most he's been invested. I don't know if it's true or not. He said it, but and then obviously you have Dallas Goedert, who is perceived to be tight end 1 at this point.
Yeah.
How do you think that kind of works? Do you think there'll be 2 tight end sets? Do you think one sees the field a little bit more than the other?
I think the Eagles are going to run out a lot of 2 tight end sets this year. I mean, my belief is that it was always their plan to trade Zach Ertz this offseason, and it is thus my belief that they weren't able to obtain the return that they expected. I think that's fairly obvious. If someone had offered the Eagles a 2, they would have done it in a second. Even a 3 in a package or something like that. Like that's fairly obvious to me. So what the Eagles should now do is just double down on the roster you already have. Goddard is I think, probably a better all-around player at this point, but Zach Ertz is still a very useful pass-catching player at that position. And you can employ both of them and use Goddard to chip and whatnot off the edge. So to me, there's definitely a package of plays for which they're both on the field. The Eagles did this very effectively during the playoffs 3 years ago, the 2018 playoffs, when Nick Foles was quarterbacking the team. They were able to go 2 tight ends, enhance the protection, and give Nick Foles a lot of easy answers. Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that's going to need a lot of easy answers. So for me, like, if Ertz and Goddard and Miles Sanders in the pass game are involved to a large degree, my hope, my expectation even, is that will open up the passing game vertically down the field, and the Eagles now actually have people that can run 4-3 and a quarterback that's willing to throw the ball down there. So I don't think the Eagles hanging on to Zach Ertz is all that bad of a thing. He's also a pro. He's invested, and that's what I respect about the player is that he's not the kind of guy that's going to dog it. If he tweaks his hammy, he's not going to take a week off. Zach Ertz is a pro. He's one of my favorite Eagles, or at least one of my favorite Eagles of recent years. And he's going to respect the game and respect the fan base in this town because there's a mutual admiration there. At least I believe. So to me, like that was a distraction. I don't expect it to be one in the season unless he balls out. The Eagles are losing, and then thus look to trade it.
I think you're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets to start the season at least, simply because past Devontae Smith, right, you have a lot of unknowns with Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins, and then you're down to Greg Ward and J-Jaw. If Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert are probably your number 2 and 3 best, route runners and pass catchers, I think Sirianni's going to be forced to put them on the field together at the same time just because they're way more reliable than the other 2 are, barring the other 2, stepping up from the jump. But listen, man, we've talked offense so far. I want to switch sides I want to rotate to the other side of the ball. Am I wrong for being excited about this defensive unit? Because 5 months ago, I thought this unit would give up 30-plus points a game, and now you bring in Steven Nelson, you bring in Ant Harris, you bring in Eric Wilson, Javon Hargrave's healthy, etc. I'm kind of excited about this unit.
So I didn't mean to cut you off there, but you just said something there that no one else is saying. The Eagles' defense could be kind of good. Like I don't want to say it too loudly because I don't want them to hear it in the building and then revert back to their previous ways. To me, there's one question and one question only as it relates to the Eagles' defense this year that will determine whether or not they're a good unit or a bad unit. Can they play man coverage? That's it. Last year, they ranked 3rd in the league in pass defense when playing zone. They ranked 28th when playing man. That was by opponent QBR. It's my favorite quarterback stat. So what that tells me is they could only really win one way, and we saw them exposed badly. The Seahawks team is the best example I can think of off the top of my head in games in which they just could not play man coverage against teams with wide receivers that could match up well, especially in the slot. Some of these bigger guys that more contested catch types. That was a big problem for this team last year. But let's talk about the things that we know. We know, again, that the Eagles' defensive line is going to wreak havoc. We know that for sure. They're not only good, but they're really, really deep. I like the rookie a lot from Louisiana Tech, Milton Williams. He is a freaking that guy's a hotel on wheels. I think he could be a really nice player.
I say it again every week. I can't stop saying it. He is a huge human being. I've never seen anything.
He is
I say it every week.
He brings 18. He's going to bring 18 wheels with him to every game. You get 30 or 40 snaps out of him, maybe 20 or 30 snaps out of him. Like there's definite value there. But I'm very much a believer that linebackers just don't matter in the NFL. I mean, if you build your defense in such a way that like you have good ones, like sort of the way that Tampa Bay does, the way that Seattle used to, the way that San Francisco does now. Like if you're running a zone heavy scheme and you're asking your linebackers to do certain stuff, they matter. But the way that the Eagles have built their roster is like I'm not nearly as worried about that collection of players as everyone else. I'm just going to pass over them and go to the secondary. The secondary has a chance to play off this year. I'm just crossing my fingers. Darius Slay is a better talent than he has played. I think the signings of Harris and the signings of Nelson are like good value signings given what the Eagles could do. My concern there is depth, right? So this is where the Carson Wentz albatross contract really rears its ugly head. Depth in the secondary. The Eagles can't absorb injuries there. You can remember last year or two, individual games that the Eagles would have won that didn't. Only if they had an average secondary.
Yeah.
I don't need these guys to be the Legion of Boom. But if you can be league average from the perspective of pass defense there, you're going to play up because the line is going to rank in the top 5 or 6 in the league in generating pressure. All of a sudden, you have something. It works together. But, I mean, like I said, last year there were just examples in which once they were in man coverage, like they were lost possessions. Like you're asking, are they going to allow 3 or are they going to allow 7? And my expectation is that we probably lie somewhere in the middle. But if you ask me, like, where is the Eagles' defense going to rank at the end of the season in points allowed, top half or bottom half? I would guess the top half. I think they're going to be that kind of good.
I mean, I think that's what happens when you're not relying on the Graylin Arnolds and the Michael Jacquets of the world on the outside of your defense. But yeah,
that is true.
So let's kind of hop into Sunday. What are your thoughts?
Let's do it.
The Eagles come out with a win on Sunday. Kind of give us your why they would win or why they would lose type thing.
So I'll do it this way. Don't get out, but we do like a wins if segment. So I'll say the Eagles will win this game if they don't let Calvin Ridley beat them by himself. So you look at Calvin Ridley's numbers in the games in which Julio Jones did not play last year. He was a freaking monster. He is a top 10 talent at that position. And like we just discussed, if he's going to be put in man-to-man situations against whomever, Slay or Nelson or Matt, whomever, that's an issue for me. Like the Eagles are going to have to be very conscious of where he is on the field at all times. They're not going to beat him up in the run game. But Arthur Smith is a good coach. Matt Ryan's a reasonably good quarterback. They'll dial up stuff. Where the Falcons have struggled historically, and because this is Matt Ryan's kryptonite, is in the red zone. So if the Eagles allow 400 yards of offense, they might only allow 20 or 22 points. Like that's going to be the key for the Eagles defense is don't let Calvin Ridley score a 50-yard touchdown and control the game once you get to the red area when you're on defense. I think that on that side of the ball, that is far and away the biggest key that I have. On offense, I think a lot of people operate under the assumption that the run game feeds into the play action, and so you have to do one before the other. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. Like if you look at the success of the Tennessee Titans lately, like it's been like a ton of play action early in the game, Tannehill to those studs, and then Derrick Henry runs the air out of the ball in the second half. To me, Jalen Hurts has the arm strength and the downfield aptitude to take shots against a really bad secondary. Like I want him to be dropping bombs. I don't care. Like I'm talking about on first and second down, right?
Right.
If you're in 2nd and 4, I want to see a shot to Rager 1-on-1 on the outside. If you're in 1st and 10, I want to see a 25-yard chuck to Devontae Smith in the middle of the field, match up against the slot corner. Like I want to see that because I think that is the likeliest way actually to get Jalen Hurts feeling himself. Like Jalen Hurts is not going to be a guy that's going to complete 75% of his balls in almost any context. Like, to me, like the number here to look is not his yards per attempt; it's his yards per completion. It's how much damage are you doing when you're hitting the ball. Like it's in baseball, it's like he's someone I wanted to swing for the fences, and I can deal with the strikeouts. That's sort of what I'm saying here. So I can deal with a couple empty possessions, but like I'm not. He's not someone for whom I'm confident you're gonna be able to like methodically move the ball down the field. But if he's able to gash the Falcons early in this game, I think it opens up the run game for both him and Miles Sanders in such a way that offensive line can play downhill. They're getting you 3 or 4 yards before contact, and all of a sudden you look up and the Eagles have outrushed the Falcons by 65 yards in the third quarter. Like that's, I think, the blueprint for this game.
So I'm glad you said that, Hembo, because you're a fantasy football man, right?
I am.
All right. If you're me,
I am a man. Thus a fantasy football man.
If you're me, week 1, Justin Herbert in Washington versus that defense, or Jalen Hurts in Atlanta versus the Falcons?
I would start Jalen Hurts. Because I'm confident that at minimum he's going to gain you something like 300 yards of total offense. Like that's the conflation here. So like Justin Herbert's probably going to have that higher passer rating, but if you're in a sort of normal league, what you want to do is accrue whatever you can. The Falcons defense stinks. Jalen Hurts can score in multiple ways. I think Jalen Hurts is a fringe top 10 fantasy quarterback this season in most formats. I feel strongly about that. If you look at the way he played at the end of last year, over the last 4 weeks of the season, he was QB9, and he didn't hardly play in that last game, right? Like that was the game the Eagles tried to lose and yielded Devontae Smith. So I think that Jalen Hurts is a really good guy to have on your roster this year. You probably can't start him 17 times, but I think against the Falcons, I think he's likely to outscore Justin Herbert when you consider the defense he's playing and the damage he can do with his legs. And when he lays an egg on Sunday, I'm sure he'll get a text from you.
Nah, man, that's who I have plugged in right now. One more thing about this Falcons game, though. You mentioned Calvin Ridley. You mentioned that matchup, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. However, it's funny because 2 minutes ago you said you don't value the linebackers on this team, and in most systems you don't. But we've seen in the past couple of seasons our linebacking crew get torched by opposing tight ends. You've got a freak of all freaks drafted with the 4th overall pick in Kyle Pitts on Sunday. What are you worried about that matchup at all?
Sure, but
do you think they could lose the game because of a Kyle Pitts? Is what I'm saying.
I don't think that's likely.
Okay.
The only way that's going to happen is if Kyle Pitts provides Matt Ryan this sort of X factor in the red zone that takes his game to a level in which we've not seen, which is very possible. But this is also someone that's a Hall of Fame wide receiver that looks like a freaking statue, a megalodon, that hasn't been able to pull down touchdowns for him. So it's not obvious to me why Kyle Pitts is going to be any different. You're not going to be able to defend Kyle Pitts with a linebacker, so you're not going to try. You're going to defend him with corners. Like that's what makes Kyle Pitts special. And from that standpoint, it's very difficult for rookie tight ends to succeed. We've not seen, like, obviously he's sort of a singular talent, but there have been high-profile tight ends that have entered the league, in the last 5 or 10 years, and none of them have had like these monster seasons. Like they just have not.
Cool.
So maybe he's the exception, and maybe the Eagles linebackers will just get absolutely lit to smithereens. For all I know, you might be right, but I am much more worried about Calvin Ridley because of the downfield damage he is likely to do than I think Kyle Pitts is more likely to be a 10, 12 at most, 15 yards per catch kind of guy. And again, when you're playing the Falcons, you can live with that because they're not going to come away with 7 very often. So, I mean, to me, like you put your best, slot guy against Kyle Pitts and make him beat you there. And when he's in pass pro or run protection, you attack him using the blitz, and that would require them to pull him off the field on 3rd down, which could help a lot.
Yeah, Jock Talk says it right there. As long as we don't have Gins Boy on the field and he's not on the roster anymore, we don't have to worry about our linebackers. I feel a lot better there. But listen, man, I think that's it for the Eagles talk. I do have to get your predictions, though. We asked your predictions on the Eagles Falcons week 1. Kickoff show, Hembo. Super Bowl picks.
All right. So I as far as week 1 is concerned, I think the Eagles are going to win this game outright, believe it or not. I don't. This is not a game for which I feel exceedingly confident. I still want to see where the money split is on Saturday before I make a definitive judgment. But I really like the matchup, to be candid with you. Like this is a team that I think we can really move the football on. And I'm just until I see Arthur Smith and Matt Ryan and that collection of weapons hook up in such a way. And I don't expect they'll run the football much at all.
Yeah,
that's really correct. So like maybe 3rd and short type deals. Like he was pretty good last year, but like I'm definitely not counting my chickens before they hatch. We were an underdog in the freaking game, but I like the Eagles outright in this game. And I think the Eagles are going to win like 8 games this year. I think 8-9 is my projection, which I think is sort of in between the range of outcomes, maybe a little bit on the high side.
Yeah. So before I do actually get to your Super Bowl picks, you made a great point there. I probably am leaning Eagles this weekend anyway, even though they are underdogs right now. But how important do you think it is that they do win this game from I don't believe they're going to make the playoffs this year. I think they're going to probably be 2nd or 3rd in the division. I hope I'm wrong.
Me too.
But how important is it for them to go down to Atlanta and get a win when you look at like this gauntlet of a schedule through the first 6 to 7 weeks when you have San Fran, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Dallas on the road on Monday night? They have Carolina and Atlanta mixed in there. So how important for the sake of this team's, mental to not start the season 0-6?
You start the season 0-6. Philadelphia will change its name to Armageddon. I mean, that would be. I don't care how low the expectations are. That would suck. But I view the schedule thing differently than most people because we all think we know how good everyone's going to be,
Yeah, that's true.
and no one ever does. Like I live
Yeah.
in a world in which I talk to like ESPN NFL analysts on the phone literally every night, and we all get it wrong, top to bottom. And if you get more right than wrong, then you just got lucky that year. So. Yes, I do believe this is obviously one of the more winnable games on the schedule. And to give them some wind in their sails as they sort of move forward would go a long way in making me feel good. But to me, like, I don't want to say the outcome isn't the first thing or most important thing because it's an NFL game. Of course it is. But if Jalen Hurts makes sound decisions and the secondary plays up, I'll come away from this game happy. Candidly, even if the Eagles lose, like I can't believe I'm saying that because like it's my freaking team, but that's like the process is what matters here. Like early in the season, it's the process that matters. And if the Eagles can have a sound process in week 1, they probably will win. If their play calling is clean and their play is crisp and they blitz appropriately and they can pass protect well and Jalen Hurts doesn't do anything boneheaded and Miles Sanders is involved. No, like if you just check all those boxes and you end up losing the game, it will still make me feel like this team is building towards something. It's just very like I've not gone into an Eagle season recently where I have less an idea what to expect, right? Like we have a new coach and a new quarterback, and no one really knows anything really about either of them. So I do think the game is relatively important from a process standpoint. But if they go 0-1 and they play great somehow, then I'm not going to walk away discouraged. I actually like for whatever it's worth, I think the under is going to play here. Like I think the over under is 48 right now. I think you're looking at a game that the Eagles win in the low to mid 20s. That I think is the likeliest scenario. And that's like, and if the game goes over, and if the game hits over, like that's the Falcons' game to win. If the game hits under, that's. I mean, do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, no, I do because I mean we've seen, I mean what this Falcons offense can do when you think back to what was that week 2 last year against Dallas.
And but even more so than that, I'm not convinced that this Eagles team is built to play from behind. That's what concerns me. Yeah. Like I think if the Eagles hit this year, they're going to look like the Ravens. They're going to look like the Panthers 5 years ago. With this quarterback that can sort of lead this dominant run game and be able to gas you down the field with a lot of leaking safeties and linebackers. But if the Eagles are down 10-0 right away, and you're going to ask Jalen Hurts to toss it around 40 or 45 times, he's going to throw a couple of interceptions, right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the recipe for a W on Sunday. But what I will say is a couple months ago, like maybe the first time we ever had you on the show, I was out, dude. I did not like the way this direction of this franchise was going. And you know, there's still so many unknowns, but I guess what I can say is I'm excited as all hell because at least it's new. I feel like since the Super Bowl, obviously not the year following the Super Bowl, but the year after that and last year, there was kind of a plainness, a staleness to this team. Doug's play calling, you know, Carson, the injuries, everything. It's all unknown. It's all new. It's all fresh. So I guess if you're an Eagles fan, that's at least something that you can hang your hat on early.
Can I tell you the worst kept secret in Philadelphia? The locker room last year was toxic, especially the second half of last season. You guys know that. You read the same. You read the same leaks that I did. So we're talking about a scenario in which if you actually do believe that culture impacts winning, it can't be worse than last year. You had a coaching quarterback that didn't talk for the last couple months of the season. You had a quarterback that flat out couldn't play. And at least this year you have sort of a fresh, optimistic mindset. Now, whether or not these guys can coach and play is going to determine how good or how bad they are. But at minimum, what culture does is creates an environment for which your players can come closer to reaching their potential, can play at their 70th percentile instead of their 40th percentile. And if you get that sort of across the board, this team is going to surprise some people, and they're definitely going to be better than the Giants. I'm not sure about Washington, and I'm not certain about Dallas, but they're definitely not going to finish last in this division if that happens.
It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And we're going to wrap up this segment here now, but just my final thoughts heading into the season is like this division's so unknown. I probably have them at 3rd right now, but because I do think they are better than the Giants also, but I don't trust Fitzpatrick for a 17-game stretch. The Cowboys with their defense and their injured offensive line and Dak coming off his injury have so many question marks. So like, while I'm not super, hopeful of this team could win the division with 7 to 9 wins, for sure. So, Hembo, 3 of the first 3 teams in the first 6 games or 7 games that the Eagles play are the last 3 teams to play in the Super Bowl. What's your Super Bowl prediction heading into 2021?
So I'm not going to do the thing where I picked the Chiefs and the Bucks because, like, everyone can do that. So I'm just not going to do that. I think so I'm pretty much just throwing haymakers here. I think the likeliest team to reach the Super Bowl out of the AFC, if it's not the Chiefs, is actually the Ravens. And I feel like the Ravens or the Bucks. Year after year failing in the playoffs with a team that no one thought could actually do it. They're just going to stick with what they do with one of the best regular season players in the league. I think it'll work in the playoffs. And in the NFC, I got San Francisco. I think San Francisco has a chance to be a dominant two-way team. They win, and the offense produces at a high level when Jimmy G starts. He's healthy right now. If he doesn't, if he gets hurt, if he can't play, Trey Lance is a first-round pick that has tools coming out of his ears, right? And I know that's going to be a top 10 defense based upon the roster, based upon the fact they were just so decimated by injury last year. So that would be my Super Bowl prediction because I'm not allowing myself to pick the Chiefs or the Bucks.
Dylan,
So two teams coming out, probably the hardest divisions in the league, I would say.
Yeah, they'll be battle tested.
Yes, sir. Go ahead,
Dylan's going to throw up here in that Lamar Jackson prediction.
I don't see the Lamar. I don't see him getting over that playoff hump. I don't see him taking his team to the Super Bowl. But I actually like the Browns over them in that division. But I mean, definitely could.
That wasn't the question.
I know. He's got a wild card team in the playoffs. All right, Hembo. Before we get you out of here, did you bring any sneaky Hembo trivia with you?
I have 3 trivia questions for you guys before you let me go.
Oh,
you ready? All right. You asked me to keep these to like our lifetime so that I'm not asking you about Chuck Bednarik, right? So my first question for you is this. Who is the longest tenured player on the Eagles' current roster? The Eagles' current roster right now, who's been on the team the longest?
I think he's on the trenches. I've got 3. Again, help me. I could be wrong here, but I want to say it's either
Give me your 3, and he'll pick the answer for you.
BG, Fletch, or Lane. Maybe
one
Kelsey
of those
can be thrown in there, but I would say Lane.
Say Fletch.
Final
It's
answer?
on the trenches. I know it. The comments are saying Kelsey. I'm going to go with BG. I could be wrong.
BG is correct.
Let's
Brandon
go.
Brown, drafted in 2010, a year before Jason Kelsey, 2 years before Fletcher Cox. Jason Peters came before him, but he's obviously no longer here.
Right.
A good play. Okay, so Okay, so you were able to get the cupcake question right. Okay, so we'll go to the next one. Okay.
Okay.
Well, who owns the Eagles? I was looking this up for doing my Jalen Hurts research. Who owns the Eagles' single-season record for rushing touchdowns by a quarterback? Most rushing touchdowns in a season, Eagles history, by a quarterback.
Well, if it's in my lifetime, I mean, Ganson, it's obviously either 5 or Vic. I would assume we're probably wrong here again. Again, you got to guess.
I think Vic is too easy of an answer. I don't think.
Yeah, I'm leaning 5, but I feel like that could be too easy as well. I forget how. I don't think Carson ran in that many. He's saying Randall, but maybe he has him in this. I'm going to go with 5 because that's when I started my Eagles fandom, but I'm not sure.
The correct answer is Michael Vick. So this is
damn
it.
This
is how Sneaky Hembo works. Like some of them are hard, some of them are easy, and you think they're too easy, so you guess something else. You see this on the show all the time. Michael Vick rushed for 9 touchdowns in a season. What was this? It was 2010. See, I thought you would actually guess Randall Cunningham. That's usually the answer to the question, all these Eagles rushing questions. But you did do a nice job at deducing my logic about when it might happen. But Michael Vick is the correct answer. All right, I got one more question for you. Overthought it. All right, see if you'll nail this one on your way out. Okay, who is the last Pro Bowler, the last Pro Bowl player that the Eagles drafted on defense?
The last? Like the most recent, you mean, or like?
Not the most recent Pro Bowler, like the most recent draft year. So, like the last, so the Eagles, like obviously the Eagles have drafted, like Carson Wentz made the Pro Bowl, Lane Johnson made the Pro Bowl, Zach Ertz made a Pro Bowl. Who's the last defensive player the Eagles drafted that made the Pro Bowl? So they would have had to have made the Pro Bowl with the Eagles and been drafted by the Eagles.
I'm pretty sure Fletch was in a Pro Bowl, wasn't he, Gant?
Yeah, I want to say Fletch as well.
Fletcher Cox?
That is correct. Okay, so the reason I asked this question is not because it was super hard, but because it just demonstrates how bad the Eagles are at scouting and player development. And we give the offense a hard time. Like, I was in college the last time they drafted a Pro Bowler that played defense. Like, they've had some reasonably good defenses since then, but their scouting and player development people are just the freaking worst. And I think
what do you mean, dude? My freshman year of college, I was told they just drafted the next Reggie White from his alma mater.
You mean the draft in which we could have had T.J. Watt? Gosh, I mean Burnett's a decent enough player, but I mean,
except he's probably on his way out the door now.
The Eagles do a nice job of compiling volume, of finding value in the margins there, but they've not done a good job of identifying top end players. That's for damn sure.
All right, Hembo, before we wrap up, actually, let's switch right back. Do the Phillies take a W tonight? Because they are 5-0 versus the first-place Milwaukee Brewers this year so far.
Yes, of course the Phillies are going to win tonight because they're not playing the Pirates, Diamondbacks, or Marlins. The Phillies will win. The Phillies would get swept by the Orioles, but themselves sweep the Dodgers. That's just the team that we have. So I love what Zach's doing right now. He's shoving every fifth day. Bryce is the best hitter on the planet. I think there's enough ancillary pieces around him that they're going to win tonight. And they're going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to win the East. Like, I don't think there's a real path, an obvious path in the wild card. Although I suppose it is possible. But again, I think that schedule lends itself to this team. Like, if the Phillies don't make the playoffs this year, I would consider it a colossal failure, massive disappointment.
I just feel like I've seen this story before. I know the way this plays out. And again, tell me if you feel otherwise. But I'm telling you right now, they're gonna take at least 2 or 3 in Atlanta from the Braves in the second to final series. They're gonna take over the division that weekend, and then they're gonna drop like 2 or 3 or the last 3 games the following series at home and miss the playoffs because that's how this team is motivated. But I hope I'm wrong. And I just want to see Bryce Harper and a red October. Hembo, thank you so much. Oh yeah, oh yeah, right in the middle of Jalen Hurts season as well. Hembo, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show again. Everybody, give him a follow on Twitter at Paul Hembo if you haven't already. I'm sure most of you guys already have. And that's it for tonight. So, guys, tomorrow night, DSM Media and Trending for 4 Quarters will be at Throwbacks Bar and Sports Lounge in, is it Hockessin, Delaware? I forget. But we'll be down there at 9 p.m. start time, getting you guys ready for the Eagle season as well. Hembo, Gint, everybody, have a nice night and go Birds.